There's a lot to get through because, of course, we've got the latest on the ceasefire, and actually Sunday papers are slightly out of date because of what's been developing here this morning. We're going to keep you posted with that. Just to remind you, we've got the names of 3 hostages that are due to be released at 2 p.m. our time. So that is the British hostage Emily Damari, who's 28, also Romy Gonan, who is 24. She was at that Nova Music Festival when she was kidnapped on October the 7th, and Doran Steinbrecher, who is 31 and a veterinary nurse. So 3 young women there, and we will hopefully be seeing them being released this afternoon. And GB News will, of course, be keeping you abreast of breaking news there. Lots of stories in the papers today about Team Trump and whether they're going to be able to get on very well with Keir Starmer. But somebody who is in Washington, D.C. now is the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Priti Patel, who joins us. Lovely to see you this morning, Shadow Foreign Secretary. Thank you for getting up early for this media round. Lovely to see you. Look, what do you make of the reports coming out of the Middle East? We think that Emily Damari, who is one of the British hostages, will be released this afternoon. Strikes me that this ceasefire has seemed as if it's on a bit of a knife edge. We've had the resignation of Ben Gavar, a very hard right minister in Netanyahu's government. How do you think the coming hours are going to play out?
Well, look, Camilla, first of all, thank you for having me on the programme this morning. This is an incredibly fragile and delicate time. There's no question about that. And, you know, as we're speaking, in the last hour, we heard that there were some challenges around the ceasefire. But importantly, we now know that 3 hostages will be released today. And none of us can imagine the level of anxiety that those families of the hostages will be feeling right now. So I think, you know, we've got to really think of them. And as ever, we urge everyone to really work together. This is a really, really pivotal time. This ceasefire, the negotiation, the talks that have taken place, everything that's led us to this particular moment is, you know, is incredible. But at the same time, we have to be deeply, deeply careful. I think quite cautious as well, because this is fragile. It's a very fragile and delicate situation. We know that this will be phased over a period of time with hostage releases. But I think importantly, all parties must really come together. And one, you know, we can't imagine as well, you know, there are big burdens and pressures on the Israeli government. They have a duty to the hostage families as well to do everything they possibly can to get the hostages released, all the hostages released. And I think that's what we all want to see.
I think we can agree that Donald Trump's role in all this has been instrumental, not least after he threatened that all hell would break out if the hostages weren't released, or at least news of a ceasefire by the time he has his inauguration on Monday night. We've got quite a lot of reporting in the papers here about Team Trump wanting to exact revenge on Starmer for meddling in the US election, question marks over whether Lord Mandelson will still be able to be the UK ambassador to the US. Will it be blocked by Trump? And then we have this morning Sadiq Khan warning about the march of fascism as Trump takes power again, suggesting that there is going to be resurgent fascism, not only as a result of Trump re-entering the White House, but also because of the rise of people like Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Is this helpful rhetoric?
No, of course it's not. And I think Sadiq Khan's comments are absolutely unacceptable. There is so much that's unacceptable about Sadiq Khan's views and comments, but you won't be surprised by what I think about that. Look, the reality is President Trump is going to be inaugurated tomorrow in that building behind me. He has won a huge mandate. The American people have put their hopes and trust and confidence in him to deliver for the people of America, for this great country, but also importantly for us, and I say this as a Conservative, you know, I've been invited here by our sister party, the Republican Party. We have strong and enduring ties and links with our sister party. We've always stood shoulder to shoulder as 2 countries, and that's where we should be again. The challenge and the onus now is on Sir Keir Starmer, his Labour government. Perhaps his mayor should, you know, really now just keep his views to himself, because Trump has a mandate and a big majority, and we should respect that. And I would also say the same about Khan's comments about Georgia Maloney. She has a mandate and a majority to run her country. It's not for him to give a running commentary. It really isn't. The onus now is on Keir Starmer's government to step up and rebuild links and relationship with the Trump administration, with the new coming administration. It is not surprising that I think the newspapers are speculating about what that relationship is going to be. It's inevitable, primarily because Labour do not have a good, strong, solid track record, unlike the Conservative Party when it comes to working with the Trump government. I was in the last Conservative government where I worked with the first Trump government on major issues such as national security, homeland security, home affairs. And so we have a solid track record, both in government and out of government with our sister
Priti
party.
Patel, is it true to say, and I know you have got good relationships with Republicans, but isn't it true to say that actually the person with the best relationship with Donald Trump right now, who could be the conduit between the UK and the US, is actually your rival in reform, Nigel Farage?
Well, look, I don't agree with that whatsoever, because, as I've said, both in government and out of government, our ties are enduring. And, you know, we work with the Republican Party and we support each other. Our relationship is based on long-standing values, you know, values about freedom, democracy, and what we have achieved historically together. You can't airbrush that out. And we know Labour like to airbrush history and rewrite history. But specifically, you've asked me about reform. There's a massive difference. Our ties are enduring. We're not a pop-up in the way in which reform are. And of course, there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest in the relationship. You know, politics is built upon relationships and trust, but also mutual respect. And that's something that is really deep. It's entrenched in my party in terms of that relationship we have with our sister party, the Republican Party.
Can I ask you just one domestic question before you go, Priti Patel? I was just looking back at some of the work that you tried to do on the grooming gang child rape scandal in this country. And there's a report from 2020 where it suggests that you felt you were being given the runaround, and I quote, by officials at the Home Office when it came to trying to produce a probe into the ethnicity of some of the perpetrators of these appalling crimes. When you were at the Home Office, did you find that civil servants blocked your inquiries into this?
Well, first of all, Camilla, thank you for raising this, because it's a really, really important issue and it spans a very significant period of time now. You've asked me about my time at the Home Office on this. I set up something called the External Reference Group that looked into the characteristics of the perpetrators of these awful, abhorrent rape grooming gangs. And on that basis, I brought in a range of people, including a fellow colleague from the Labour Party, Sarah Champion. We worked with one of the victims and survivors, Sammy Woodhouse, and we brought her on as well, because I felt it was so important to have the voices and the insights and, dare I say it, the experiences of those that knew so much about this, but also who knew so much about the perpetrators, the communities, the groups of people, and the characteristics of those that were involved. It was difficult. I'll be very honest about that. I personally felt institutionally there were there was a degree of denial. There was a culture of denial and institutionally, and by that I mean the institutions of the state, a government department, just did not want to tackle head on some of these issues around specific communities that were responsible for these absolutely abhorrent crimes against young girls in some of the communities and parts of the country that we're learning more about now.